Our opening thought this morning comes from Kurt Vonnegut from God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. He writes, I think it's terrible the way people don't share things in this country. I think it's a heartless government that will let one baby be born owning a big piece of the country, the way I was born, and let another baby be born without owning anything. The least a government could do, it seems to me, is to divide things up fairly among the babies. Our next reading comes from Jessica Bruder from Nomadland, Surviving America in the 21st Century. She writes, the most widely accepted measure for calculating income inequality is a century-old formula called the Gini coefficient. It's a gold standard for economists around the globe, along with the World Bank, the CIA, and the Paris-based Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. What it reveals is startling. Today, the United States has the most unequal society of all developed nations. America's level of inequality is comparable to that of Russia, China, Argentina, and the war-torn Democratic Republic of the Congo. Our next reading is from Matthew Desmond's Poverty by America. Desmond writes, let's call it the scarcity diversion. Here's the playbook. First, allow elites to hoard a resource like money or land. Second, pretend that arrangement is natural, unavoidable, or better yet, ignore it altogether. Third, attempt to address social problems caused by the resource hoarding only with the scarce resources left over. So instead of making the rich pay all their taxes, for instance, design a welfare state around the paltry budget you are left with when they don't. Fourth, fail. Fail to drive down the poverty rate. Fail to build more affordable housing. Fifth, claim this is the best we can do. Preface your comments by saying, in a world of scarce resources, blame government programs, blame capitalism, blame the other political party, blame immigrants, blame anyone you can except those who most deserve it. Gaslighting is not too strong a phrase to describe such pretense. Democracy cannot survive increasing income inequality. As the gap between the rich and the poor widens, so does inequality in their political power and in their political participation, with fewer and fewer people controlling our economic and our political processes, which are intimately connected with each other. We've been here before in many ways. In the 1890s, a long time ago, a time that we refer to as the Gilded Age, a time that our current president looks to with fondness. He found the Gilded Age to be one of the best times in the history of the United States, he said. It was a time of exorbitant wealth concentrated in the hands of a few. It was a time of great power, the 1890s were, for oligarchs like John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, or as some pronounce it, Carnegie, Jay Gould, and J.P. Morgan. Those were four of the wealthiest oligarchs of that time in the Gilded Age of the 1890s. But President Theodore Roosevelt unlike many politicians of his time, unlike most politicians of his time, was actually committed to working against extreme wealth inequality. And he actually sought to limit corporate power and increase economic competition. And his response to the Gilded Age was to use antitrust laws that had been passed before he became president. He actually implemented them and attempted to break up monopolies that had formed. And this had the effect, not a huge effect, but some effect, of lessening income inequality. Now, income inequality still existed, and it became even more exacerbated again in the 1920s and early 30s. But during the time of FDR, the New Deal that was enacted reinforced some of the efforts of the other Roosevelt to reduce income inequality in the United States. And then a few decades later, LBJ's Great Society aspired to reduce income inequality even more. But tragically, many of the gains that were made to decrease income inequality have been lost. They've been lost, and we now find ourselves in what I think we should begin to call the 21st century Gilded Age. The minimum wage in 1965 was twice as much as it is today. In 1960s, CEOs were making only 20 times the amount of money made by their workers, which is still quite a few many times over what the workers were making. Today, in the United States, CEOs are making over 200 times what their workers are making. The Rockefellers, Carnegies, Morgans, and Goulds have been replaced by Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, Ellison, Buffett, and Gates. Before there was Project 2025, something that we all are now sadly aware of, there was the Powell Memo of 1971, the memo that Lewis Powell wrote outlining ways for corporate power to come back in the United States just a few months before he was nominated to become a Supreme Court justice by Richard Nixon. He wrote this memo that really is a blueprint for what's been happening over the past 55 years. If you want to understand why the United States has devolved so completely into the corporate oligarchy we are experiencing today, the Powell Memo is essential reading. It's out there, easy to find on the internet. A society that has a significant number of persons who are living in poverty or who are experiencing a context of extreme wealth inequality, we see clearly is prone to autocracy. Vibrant democratic societies in which persons are happy and have their basic needs being met well are much less likely to drift towards autocracy than societies that find themselves in a situation of systemic economic injustice, extreme inequality, and perpetual poverty, the context in which we find ourselves today. Over the past century, many of the world's most influential autocrats took advantage of the despair and hopelessness in people brought on by woeful economic conditions. It's not an accident that totalitarian communists came to power through revolution in countries around the world that were experiencing extreme poverty and extreme wealth inequality. It's also not an accident that ultranationalists and fascists came to power in places like Germany, Italy, and Japan during a deep global depression prior to World War II. Persons and countries that are experiencing desperate economic conditions are prone to take desperate and even extreme political measures. And autocrats are more than willing to take advantage of the people's desperation to gain, maintain, and expand their power. Prior to the New Deal in the United States, there were many who were exploring these extremes that I just mentioned. There were many who were exploring the extremes of communism on the left and fascism on the right. The economic stability that was gained by the New Deal reforms to those unjust and unregulated capitalistic structures before, those coupled with the construction of a social safety net actually helped the United States become one of the world leaders in the fight against fascism in World War II, rather than going down an America First fascist path, which many wanted to do in the 1930s, including J.P. Morgan, one of those persons that was in that elite group of oligarchs at that time. It also kept the United States at that time from pivoting towards totalitarian forms of socialism like we find in the Soviet Union, China, and Cuba. But over the last 46 years, many of the economic reforms, regulations, and safety nets of the New Deal of the 1930s and the Great Society of the 1960s have given way to things like trickle-down economics and anti-regulation and anti-unions and anti-environmental measures. It's not surprising then that the last 46 years have also been a time of growing wealth inequality and economic and environmental injustice. It's also not surprising that much like the 1930s, we see many persons in the United States not just flirting with extreme measures, but taking extreme measures, both on the left sometimes with anarchy of some on the left, but more so now what we're seeing is Christian nationalism of the extreme right and the autocracy of the extreme right. Whether we go further down the path of autocracy in the United States will be determined in large part by how well we assess the underlying conditions of poverty, how well we address these underlying conditions of poverty, wealth inequality, and economic and environmental injustice. If we allow these underlying conditions to worsen even more and allow the situation to become even more desperate, then we are setting the stage even more for autocracy in the present and the future. And the Trumps and other autocrats in the world will be emboldened to implement their extreme autocratic measures as they promise to fix all of our problems. Fortunately for the United States and for the rest of the world, we know that there are models out there, that we don't have to go down the autocratic path. There are models out there for more vibrant democracy, for more just economic practices and processes. And we see those in the social democracies that are found in places like the Nordic countries and a handful of other countries around the world that represent the most full and robust democracies in the world. They're also the happiest places to live. They're the places where people are flourishing more than any other place in the world. They have better education, they have better health, they have less corruption, they have less economic injustice, more ecological sustainability, they have a more full and vibrant democracy that addresses very openly and overtly wealth inequality and provides more equality of opportunity. as the answer, not autocracy. The evidence is clear, and we're experiencing it right now, both sadly and tragically, that autocrats do not fix our problems, but rather autocrats exacerbate our problems. They take advantage of our problems for their own well-being, for their own power. More democracy in the world, not less, is the key to our future. It's the key to a more just, peaceful, participatory, and sustainable future. In the struggle between democracy and autocracy, the well-being of both people and the planet depends on democracy winning. If democracy does not win, the future of our planet and all the people on it are in great peril. But democracy winning depends on reducing income inequality. Democracy winning depends on reducing income inequality.